steps will get you to the finish line. City Classic Cars builds the best, the baddest, the nastiest SEMA bills on the planet. Hello, welcome to the Armo Builders Panel, powered by Armo, part of SEMA 360 Education. I am Sabra Johnson from City Classic Cars. I will be the moderator of this great session today, and we have some legends. I mean, some absolute living legends today, and I just can barely hide my smile. We have today Art Morrison of the legendary Art Morrison Enterprises. We also have on this illustrious panel Dan Short himself, that outgoing, charismatic builder's builder and of Phantom Works, and he's going to be here. And we also have participating Steve Cook, who builds some amazing rides that'll make a grown man blush, from Steve Cook Creations. So I'm excited. Gentlemen, welcome. I'm excited. The world is excited, and we're ready to talk cars during this season. So let's begin by, how did you guys become legends? How did you guys take your concepts from an idea stage and literally become living legends? Art, for those who may not know who you are and how you did it, give us a little bit about your story and a little bit about your how you did it, so that we can learn and glean some of that wisdom. And then we'll hear from Steve a little bit and a little bit from Dan. What you got, Art?
Well, amazingly enough, it is not the exciting story that a lot of people think. The way I got started was I couldn't find a job. This was back in 1971. I'd been just recently out of the service, got married, still, like I say, didn't have a job, went to a local shipyard because I was certified as a welder. And several days after I took their certification test, the guy came back and I called him because he didn't call me. And he said, I said, well, you know, what happened with the test? I'm just kind of curious, what's the name? And I said, Morrison. I hear him shuffling paper, and he finally got back to me and he said, Morrison. He said, God, he said, you know, he said, we kept your weld pattern or a clip. He said, just to show people what a really bad weld looked like. And that made me the decision right there. I said, obviously I can't even get a job at a shipyard, so I got to go to work for myself. Wow. And it started in my garage. And I knew a lot about automotive, because just prior to getting married, I was actually driving a wheel stander at the time also. And anyway, so that led to
you can really say you started by just kind of being in the moment. Being in the moment of what was going on in life, listening to what was going on inside of you, and you said, you know what, I'm going to launch out and I'm going to do it. I think that's amazing. Steve, tell us a little bit about how you did it. I mean, you're the dude, man. You're that. How does it feel to know that you that dude? You know what I mean? You the man. So tell us how you went from just being one of the guys to now you the man. Tell us about that.
Well, I'm still just one of the guys. I think that I just always had something. I just didn't know how not to do it, and so I just figured out ways that I could do that. And I've been very blessed to have a wife that supported me, you know. And she's always had the real job, I guess I want to call it. And she worked with me and did body work with me for 15 years. But I just grew up with the desire to always like to be around cars and automobiles, and just very fortunate and blessed to just kind of run into the right people. You know, I've been associated with Art since you know, back when we first started putting those chassis underneath a lot of restaurants, and kind of grew into a lot of that stuff. But just I don't know. You know, it's really hard to describe. It's just when you know that's what you want to do, you figure out ways to get it done.
Yeah, but much like Art, you just said, I'm going to do it. I'm doing it anyway. I'm going to keep doing it. This is my passion. I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it for the love. And it just kind of blossomed, right?
Sure. Yeah, exactly. That's totally what happened. And, you know, there wasn't going to be any reason that I wasn't going to, you know, like I said, it seems like at the time you don't really have a lot going for you, but you find ways to get it done.
Yeah. And for those that are listening, listen. This is the Builder's Builder. This is about as humble as a group of guys as you can meet. And how did he do it? So if you're at home and you're in the idea stage, how did he do it? He just did it. So next we have Dan. I mean, he's been on TV almost a decade, you know, and just have done so much in the industry. Dan, tell us about it. Tell us not only how you went from the Air Force to having a one-man shop, to having one of the biggest shops in the nation, to having one of the greatest shows running for such a period of time. You really the man. Tell us about it.
Well, I appreciate the introduction. It's better than the real story. Look, I bought my first car at 18 years of age and didn't even know how to open up the hood on it. I was in the military at Fort Bragg. I was working in medicine and eventually became a pilot. So my background is anything but working in a garage. And in fact, the first garage I ever worked in was Phantom Works, the one that I created. So I spent 24 years in the military, but the whole time what I really wanted to do was build cars. And, you know, people would constantly complain that I would show up at work, you know, whether it was to put flight gloves on or to put surgical gloves on, but I had grease on my hands and under my fingernails, because even though I had no formal education, every night of my life I was building a car. I was painting them and wiring them, and I learned how to do interiors and didn't take a single class in anything. It was all self-taught. And so when I finally retired, the decision was natural. Do what you love and build cars. And if you're going to build cars,
say that one more time. Say that one more time so we can get that thing can soak in. Say that again.
Well, I'm not sure which one thing.
Do what you love. Tell me about that.
Yeah, you got to do what you love. You know, there's that saying: if you do the thing that you're passionate about, the thing that you love, you never work a day in your life. And that's kind of the idea that I pursued. Being a car builder didn't come from working in a garage and having, you know, going through some sort of a technical institute. It just came from a desire. And there is. And I don't mean to be insulting to any car builder, but we all know as builders, there's nothing that's absolute rocket science about what we do. It is basic principles of engineering, of physics. It's all a lot of common sense applied, but it's a matter of you got to get your hands dirty and you got to just go do it. And that's really the story of Phantom Works, that you have no idea how much I learned from my guys the day we opened and how much I learned from them every single day. I'm just another employee here. I'm just the guy that at the end of the month has to sort of write the checks. And that's, other than that, I am just another employee of this company.
Man, you guys are amazing. You guys are so humble, and we see how you did it. Sounds like recipe number one, if you're at home listening, be humble. Be humble and just stay in the moment, and you can be like these guys here. Hey, here's a hot question. I'm going to put Dan in the fire first. This is a hot subject. What's the difference between a restoration and a resto mod in your estimation? Is a restoration a resto mod? Is it not a resto mod? Where's restoration headed in the context of resto mod? Let's talk about these two words in the context of building cars. And Dan, let's start with you and get your perspective, and then maybe we can go to Steve.
Oh, okay. I'm going to start by just saying the term restoration is unfortunately quite a prostituted term. That to me, a restoration means that you're making the car as close to the day it was manufactured in 1941 or in 1967 as possible. And a lot of people think that a paint job is a restoration, and there's so much more involved. So as a purist and a guy that loves to do restorations and takes thousands of hours to do one, I'm kind of a little protective over that term. Now, a resto mod is, for some people, it is a restoration, but then you combine it with all the modern elements. So the term resto mod, as far as I know, and I could be wrong, but it's restoration with modernization to be a resto mod. And so, of course, today the big thing is these modern fuel-injected engines, the modern overdrive transmissions, modern gauges, and we're in the greatest country in the world. We live in a place where it doesn't matter what you need. Somebody out there like Art builds you that chassis so that you can create the resto mod of your dreams. Basic differences. Resto mod is a modernized version of a restoration. I'm a little bit more of a purist. For those of you who watch the show, you probably know that I'm a guy that sticks a little bit more with the old details, but we do both.
Yeah, I like that answer. All right, Steve, it's a big word. In some people's mind, you say the word resto mod, you say fuel injection, it's like you curse them out. You know what I mean? It's like blasphemy. So how do you reason that in what you do? Tell me about it. And I love what you say on your website, that you like cars to still look like, I'm paraphrasing, to look like they did back in the day. You don't want to make it a spaceship. You want to keep it a 67 Camaro or whatever the number may be. So talk to us, how do you reason incorporating modern technology in the context of still being true to the car and not, just gutting it all up? How do you reason it as a builder?
Well, I think that mostly what my customers are looking for, a car they can relate to, they grew up around, and they really enjoy and love the design part of that. It takes them back to a place where they were 16 or 25 or just got married, but the reality of some of that stuff is those cars need to be updated. The fuel's different, and their creature comforts. They're used to driving brand new cars that do a lot of things, and they want to put a lot of miles on them, and they want to be able to take them places where maybe somebody doesn't know anything about a 56 Plymouth, but they would understand the modern stuff that's in there. So you're kind of trying to make an old car do what cars are doing nowadays. A lot of these good guys tours and a lot of tours, just people driving all over the country in these things. And when I first started, most of the people just wanted them to really look good and drive them a little bit to a local car show and do things. But now they're asking a lot more of these cars, and so you're trying to anticipate everything. And you can go to a local nice shop down the street, they don't even know what a carburetor is. So nowadays they can just plug into them, scan, figure out what's going on. So you're building a brand new car that looks like an old car to some extent, I think. But those guys really want that. They want, they got leather interior. Most of these cars weren't built with that stuff, and
let me bring your buddy Art into this conversation. Art, can you go too far? That's how I'm gonna ask you. Individuals are wanting to drive these cars on these superhighways. Individuals want that cold AC and that comfort, and we're just so used to it now. My daughter got in the car, and my baby, and the window cranked. She said, "Daddy, what is that?" Times have changed. But are we going too far with the resto mod? Are we outpricing ourselves? Are we running away from the everyday guy? Are we getting too far? Because I see what Dan is saying about, hey man, let's just keep it a classic. Let's keep this thing pure. And I certainly, I'm the resto mod factory, so I'm certainly where Steve is. But can we go too far with this part? You tell us. You build all kind of stuff. Let us know.
The really simple answer is no. You can't go too far. So what we've done is try to make a frame that and a chassis and suspension that will give the person the opportunity to have their car, whatever it may be, and it doesn't matter if it's a late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. It just doesn't matter your make and model, but we give it the opportunity to drive like a today car, as far as the braking, as far as the steering, as far as just the general drivability of a car. That has always been our goal. And we've got several engineers here that are wonderful, bright young guys. That's what they're working on every day, is to make the deal a little bit better than it was yesterday. And that's what we try to achieve. And I think that's what has put us. We never always look at what someone else is doing. We just have our own goals, our own what we shoot for. But the answer to your question is no. You can't go too far, because there's always something new around the corner, and that's what we strive to do.
As we're here, we still got a little bit of time on this subject. I want to go back to you and ask you a different question. What's the most important part of the resto mod? Because Dan, I agree with you. Some people think it's candy paint. Candy paint. Man, I got a resto mod. No, you don't. You just got candy paint. So if I got a booming sound system, this is a resto mod. No, it's not. You just got a booming sound system. All right. When you say resto mod and you say drivability and you say function and you say let's ride, what is the most important part? Is it the chassis? Is it the engine? I mean, I know your chassis. But talk to me about it.
And again, we look at it, we say it's the chassis. The fact that you can make, I'll use one of our most popular frames, a 55, 57 Chevy, that you can take and put a new frame underneath that car. If you were to jump into a stock 55 or 57 Chevy, it would shock you at how bad it drives and how bad it handles and everything that it does in its stock form. But all of a sudden, you put new frame underneath it, and that's what we look at as a resto mod. It's something that brings that old classic body to to today's standards, whether it's a like I say a 55 Chev or a 53 Packard or an early Corvette. The fact those cars are just absolutely gorgeous and the bodies are just beautiful until you drive them, until you try to take them on a long trip and you find that your back is beat up, that you're going, and I mean, you go to stop and they don't. That's what our goal is to make these things drive as good as they look.
Hey, I love that. You know, the way I define resto mod is I want it faster, I want it safer, and I want it more unique to my sensibilities. I just want the car to match me. So when I get a client, they want a resto mod, I got to let them know it's going to cost a little bit more, number one. But number two, you want it faster, safer, and more unique to you. But Dan, I want to come back to you. What do you do when you have, because I know you do a lot of imports as well, am I correct on that? So
you are, yes.
So what do? You know the chassis is important, and so what do you do when you're going to use, you're not going to get a purpose-built chassis, you're going to use that chassis, maybe you want to upgrade it a little bit, you want it to drive. How do you deal with that? And then the B part of that question is, how do you deal with it when restoring it back means restoring it back to an old system like those Lincolns? You did a great episode one time on Lincoln, and you was like, it wasn't no good in the beginning. So, I mean, what we're going to do, make it a piece of junk again? So tell me how you deal with that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, look, there are some chassis that have inherent weaknesses, and first of all, I'm going to agree with Art, and not just because he's on this panel, but I'm going to agree wholeheartedly that the chassis and suspension is the single most important part of a quality resto mod. So if I've got a chassis that is not in production, that is not available in terms of a modernized version, and I have to work with it, well, the first thing I've got to do is make sure that it is in fact strong enough. And we've had a few people bring us cars that there was nothing left of the chassis but rust holding hands, and at that point there's nothing you can do. You're trying to build a house on quicksand. And so we go out and at a minimum get an original chassis that's very, very strong. If someone then wants to take an original chassis and make it stronger, and I can't call Art up and say, hey, can you produce this for me? Then we look at what are the structural weaknesses of it. And in many cases, you can do some improvements by, for instance, taking C-channel and boxing it in. You can add gussets to other parts, and you really have to look at weaknesses. So you take, for instance, a 66 Mustang. Ford didn't understand the importance of the torque boxes on the front of the Mustang in 1966. And so if I've got to take an original Mustang and make it stronger, I add some of the Ford improvements on it, including we'll even go put a convertible floor into a coupe or a fastback, because the convertible floors are much stronger. So there are ways to work with an original car and make it stronger, but you're never going to achieve the result that Art has by going to an actual modern chassis with modern suspension and modern brakes. You can only get part way there.
Hey, those are two great answers. Steve, let's deal with a smaller component, restoration versus resto mod. If you don't mind, talk to us a little bit about carburation versus the aftermarket fuel systems. What about that? What do we do there? What about a points versus HEI? Can you talk about that a little bit, about some of the systems, specifically dealing with whether you go fuel injection or whether you keep it carbureted?
Well, I think it goes back to just once you get it up and running, it's harder to find people that understand the carburetor, even though it's a simpler thing, seems like. But, you talk to anybody under 30 years old, they're all electronics and fuel injection. And so every place you pull into, you have to find specialists. I still got carburetors in some of my cars, and they seem to work fine. But I think it's just, the difference in the fuel quality and atomization of the fuel and just the mindset of everybody, being able to plug in and scan and see what the issues are instead of diagnosing it with a test light or, whatever your issues are, seem to, it's just, we're kind of a victim of new car, what's going on with everything. And like I said, just the simplicity of what you can pull down there or go to your local hardware or parts store and they can analyze it, tell you sort of what's going on, why they see a code or something in your new car. Well, that's kind of what people are looking for nowadays. So, and they just feel more comfortable knowing they got the latest technology in their car, I think. Sometimes you try to tell people that you don't really need all this stuff, but, I think you almost feel like you're talking to yourself sometimes when they look around and everybody else has got it. So, you just kind of, it's just what's going on,
kind of changing with the times, and from one end, it's interesting. Did you ever think you'd live to a point when you were a younger man where carburetors would be a specialty thing, and you can't find people to work on carburetors? You ever thought that would happen?
No, I think, like I said, the cars have evolved where they are, way past most people's knowledge of them. And, we still like a lot of traditional shows and go to those because of the simplicity of the car. But, for the most part, when people get into this and want to do cars, they want that assurance and that everything their new car's got. So, and I guess that's what they're relating to somewhat, and everybody wants, even if they just put a sound system in, they want the latest, greatest thing. So it's you're kind of caught between a hard spot and a rock. You're trying to talk them out of a lot of that stuff, even though, cars don't really have to have all that stuff, but, that's what they want.
Now, you're a master mechanic. Can you make a big block with a carburetor do and deal with somebody else with a fuel injection system? Can you handle that? Can you make the car do what it do with both systems?
Yeah, I think if you watch drag racing do it, it's a pretty level playing field with a lot of this stuff to a point. But I'm not a master mechanic necessarily. I don't think so. But I'm just, it just boils down to what people want, and that's really what we're a service business, and so we learn to change and do things with the times. But I drive a car with a Hilbert injection, which most people don't understand, but it's as simple as the car they drove up in. It just looks different, configured different. But like I said, carburetor, it's just float bows and, it's just a different mindset. What you want your car to look like or what you want it to do, that's a real personal thing. So, if you're a purist and want, that stuff, there's guys that, could drive a Duesenberg across the country, but most of us couldn't even get in and start it probably. So, it's, I think a lot of people build cars thinking about, what would somebody want? What do they, maybe the selling point if they ever had to get rid of it or something. I don't really know what motivates people.
If you had to take the pick, I'm gonna start with Art. Art, I already know what you're gonna say. You're gonna take a resto mod or a restoration?
Oh God, it'd be. I mean, if we just did restorations,
you get one car. Which one you want?
So no, it's got to be resto mods.
Let me ask you this, Art. I know you do original as well. What percentage is of your chassis, if you don't mind sharing, what percentage are resto mods and what percentage are OEM? That would be interesting.
Oh gosh, it is probably still 90% of what we do goes to resto mod. there's some. We used to have a deal we did for GM years ago where we did a lot of stuff for their design center, for their concept design center, for just different suspensions, pieces like that. But right now, I'll bet 95% of what we do still goes to the resto mod type
That's
market.
Hey, Dan, let me ask you a question. Following up on Art, what percentage of the builds you do in your shop are pull the engine out, rebuild the engine, this very engine, put this very engine back in? What percentage of it is OEM using those, for the most part, the same parts or the same spec versus some level of modification, even if it's not restoration, whether it's import or domestic? How would you answer that? What do you think?
Yeah, if you go back just 10 years, it was 97% restorations with original motors, original transmissions. But let me take that back. 15 years ago, it was 97% original. Then the proliferation of the LS engine, Art Morrison chassis, Tremec 5-speed transmissions, Ford 9-inch differentials available for every car in the world, and IRS's, height.
And you got my whole blueprint. But keep talking.
Well, yeah. So basically, the numbers that were true 15 years ago aren't true today. That today, we're probably still doing 70% original cars and only 30% resto mods, but that's up from 98 and 2. We're up to 70 and 30.
Yeah. Let's stay right there. I'm asking you another question. What about domestic versus import? What's your percentage like? Who's restoring? Are they restoring?
I'm gonna have to throw the youngsters out of the bus on this one. Look, we've got a couple Ferraris in the shop right now, Jags, Aston Martins, Range Rovers, things like that. But the reality is they're just a bugger to build for 1,000 reasons. If you want to build a car, you got to pick from the big three of the United States of America and build them. And so even though we will take on a lot of these oddballs, the reality is our lives are pretty miserable when we do, and we tend to shy right back to good old USA.
Hey, good answer. Hey, Steve, now do you do any imports, or you're mostly American muscle?
American muscle.
I got you. Now, restoration versus, well, I'll ask you a different question. Is it, and then we'll transition to our next subject discussion. What percentage of them are fuel-injected engines versus big block, small block Chevy type of thing? What's going on there, percentage-wise?
They're all fuel-injected right now, everything we're working on.
Yeah, you're probably 95, 100%.
Yes.
Gotcha. Man, what y'all living the dream, man. Hey, this is a fun conversation. We're all smiles. We're having a ball. And tell me how COVID has affected your business. How has COVID touched how you do things? I had a great conversation with Steve Cook here. Steve, I guess we talked a few weeks ago, and you talked about, if I dare say, that clients would kind of sneak to drop by your office, if you will, because, and would tell their wives. You're not talking, not necessarily specifically about that, but just how COVID has changed your business model. And then I'll go to Dan. What do you got?
Well, I just, like you said, I just think that it's on everybody's mind, and so it's out there, and people are taking precautions, but we like to try to accept anybody any way they want to come in and respect that, and been a little bit of delay in some of the products. I understand all that, but yeah, it just, I think we just learned to work with it, and figure out how to be safe and like I said, to respect each other.
Yeah, this side of gray hair is from parts delays. Just this section right here. And customers fussing at me a little bit about it. Hey, Dan, how have you been affected? I mean, big shop, a lot of cars. How have you been affected?
Well, for the first month when COVID came out and everyone was terrified, our phone calls slowed down, our email submissions of projects slowed down, and I started getting a little scared. And then right around day 30, I think people realized that COVID is just the flu, and the floodgates opened and we get double the number of calls we got before COVID. I mean, we were already getting, 100 submissions a month, and that went to 200 a month. So the answering the phone calls and the talking to folks, we spend so much more time now than we did before. Our biggest challenge, and I'm going to agree with Steve, is just getting parts, because we've got a lot of vendors that are not producing the parts we need. So our demand is up. Our employees that found out you could get free government money took off and went free, got the free government money, and our suppliers aren't giving us everything we need. So it has been tough to deal with COVID.
Hey, Dan, stay there. Can you go back in? And I'm coming to you, Art. Go back in, not necessarily specifically or beating up the government or anything, but talk about how it has affected you. I know I've been affected as far as, competing with you can get $1,300 to stay at home, and I want to pay you less than that to work a week. So how has that affected you as far as filling out a full crew?
It affected me greatly. As you probably know, mechanics and technicians by their very nature are sort of freelancers. They can work here, they can work there. Well, when COVID came down and they were offered, and I think I'm right, in a total of about $900 a week in terms of some sort of government subsidy, they looked at, $3,000 to $4,000 a month, and they took that and still went out and went to another shop and worked under the table for half price. So, even when you're paying them 50, 60 grand a year or more to work, they found out they can make almost that much money from the government and more money if they work under the table somewhere else. And we had a fair number of guys turn and do that, and that was very tough for me personally to deal with. Men and women who thought so little about working that it was all about, can I get the free money? And that was tough for us as a shop.
Yeah, well, if it makes you feel any better, I went through some of the same kind of stuff. So, all right, you have a big operation, huge operation. Tell us how you have been affected, how your operation has been affected, maybe how production has been affected. Tell us a little bit about that, please.
When, again, just mirroring what Steve and Dan had said about the COVID, when it first hit, the government did such a phenomenal job about scaring everybody to death. They did, I think they did a masterful job at petrifying people. Well, we had a meeting with all of our guys, and currently, or at that time, we had about 44 folks here, and so we sat everybody down, and I said, okay, you can go home. We can't pay you to go home. You got a job when you come back, but that's where we're leaving it. And nobody left. What we did do is we had one of our young guys who was just absolutely terrified of this thing. He had welding equipment at home, so what he does is he picks up. He's a TIG welder. He would pick up a load of control arms, take them home, do them in his garage, bring back. The work was gorgeous, and he's doing that to this day. One of our engineers, he works in here 2 days a week, works from home 3 days a week. And anyway, and now we just finally, if there's a government official from the state of Washington, listen, I'm probably in trouble, but what we've done is yesterday, we normally do a barbecue for all the employees the first Thursday of every month. Well, we decided that finally, this has been now off since last March, that we decided, no, let's bring that back again. And yesterday was the first barbecue. We had, there was, I think 30 some folks that attended it. And anyway, and it was just wonderful. It was almost like a normal again. And again, what Dan had said, we went through March, slowed up. April was just death slow. And then all of a sudden, stuff started picking back up again in May, and we just haven't had to look back. Year to date, I think we're down in actual sold product, not shipped, but sold product. We're down just a little 3 and some odd % from 19. So we've been very, very fortunate, just unbelievably blessed. I'll put it that way. But we don't mandate masks here. We don't mandate that anybody does anything, but yet we've been turned in, got in the early going in May, in May and into June. We were turned in probably six, seven different times to the state, but they knock on wood, they didn't do anything.
Hey, hey, Steve, great sharing. Hey, Steve, we talked a little bit, and I'll go back to you guys for this follow-up as well. And we were talking about, what about a young builder that launched out like the three of you all did? They have these big Art Morrison, Dan Short, Steve Cook kind of dreams of success, and maybe they're a year in. Maybe there's a builder listening that, you know, he's 2 years or she is 2 years in, and their family is all in. And what do you tell them? What do you do when their phone has stopped ringing? You know, if Dan's phone stopped ringing, he still got a lot of projects. You know, if my phone stopped ringing or Steve's phone stopped ringing, we can handle that for a little bit. But what do you do for a young guy? And just so Art Morrison and Dan Short, you are part of, I asked Steve this a little bit, and he says, you got to talk to your client. Talk to your client and let them help you. And that type of thing. And Steve, I don't remember if you remember that conversation a little bit, but if you can kind of expound upon that, and that just kind of work with your clients that you do have and talking to them and letting them kind of help you through it. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, I remember us talking about it, and I just know that, you know, I'm not a very good communicator, so I struggle with that a lot. But I also, it's when it's time to talk, I start trying to figure out ways to, I need to know where they're at, what's going on, and especially building a car for somebody, you really want to make sure you stay on the same page with them. And like I said, I struggle. It's easy for me to just start working on the car and build everything that I think it ought to have, but I also enjoy their input. So even with the guys that work with me, we talk about everything. We look at what we want to do, we present it to them. So I probably don't do as good a job as I should, but I think as soon as we starting out, I think you got to work on what your strong suits are, but you also got to work on the things you don't do very well at. And so I like I said, I struggle with communication. I think that's what I think I told you. That's why the cars are so important to me. That is the way I communicate with people, showing them what I think a car will look like. And I'm very fortunate that there are people out there that want cars like that. But
well, according to your cars, you're a screamer. You scream, you yell when you talk. Your cars make you stop and pay attention. Let me get Dan in on this. I know our time is kind of rapidly moving. Dan, talk to the young builder out there. Talk to Dan, maybe 20 years ago, but talk to the one who had a dream. They've opened up the shop. They've signed a lease. Things were going pretty good. COVID hit them upside the head. Phone calls stopped calling. Clients haven't made the progression payment. What do you say to that young family? What do you say to them to kind of, is there a word that maybe you have for them, some wisdom?
Well, there is, and I have those conversations all the time. I am approached by young builders and, believe it or not, old builders all the time and say, how do you make this work? And my answer is fairly simple. Right up front, you cannot mislead your customer. So when a customer says, well, we can do this, and they seem to think something is easy, I say, wait a second. What you've just asked for is $10,000. I know you want it to be $1,000, but it's 10. And so when I'm talking to these young builders especially, I try to make sure that they relay to the customer as honest an answer as they possibly can, because if in fact you enter into a relationship with a client and they have the expectation that they're going to land on X number, and you really know they're probably going to land on 2 or 3 or 4 times that number, you need to tell them that straight up front. Look, if they stay on the project with you, you're still going to have a happy customer. And if they don't, then they weren't going to be happy anyway, and you're going to go to court. So stay out of court. Be honest. In fact, I overestimate the budgets on about 75% of my clients. And so at least 3 out of 4 customers leave here spending less money than we talk about. And that to me is the magic and the sort of the rule of success. And that's the thing that I pass on to my potential shop owners.
Yeah, I like that. Stay right there. How important, Dan, is it finding the right car? Getting the right car from the beginning so that you don't have that nightmare. And how bad is it to get the wrong car?
so critical. Look, when the car picks the client, in other words, if grandpa dies and he leaves you the car, that customer can't pick the car, it was picked for him. So at that point, you just have to deal with the project. But in many cases now, you know, these men and women are out looking for a project, and they think if they buy a rotted out, incomplete, you know, piece of crap on the side of the road, if it was cheap, they can build it cheap. And of course, that's the opposite. So I work with clients all the time to pick the right project. Let's spend a little bit more up front, buy a car, and the 4-letter word in the automotive industry is rust. If the car is filled with rust, it's a bad word, stay away from it. If it's not filled with rust and it's a fairly complete car, then you've probably got a good project. But, you know, work with a professional. If they don't know what they're picking, work with a professional to pick the right project, because the right project will end up with a much lower number at the end than the wrong project that starts out with a much lower number in the beginning.
Hey, man, that was a heck of a piece of wisdom. Thank you for sharing it. Hey, Art, there's a young builder out there. He tuned in just to hear from the legend himself. So now he got you, and he or she or that family's listening to you, and they want, you've been in business, you're approaching 50 years, am I correct?
January, it'll be 50.
So what one piece of wisdom could you share? Congratulations. What one piece of wisdom could you share, not only with Dan, Steve, and myself, but some of those builders who are just starting out and they're seeking to build a legendary business that continues and that's able to provide not only for their family but other families? What piece of one wisdom nugget would you share?
Yeah, it's one of those deals. It's more than one word. Dan hit on one.
A couple of words, then.
Okay, yeah, Dan hit on one of them right off the bat. Was integrity. Another one is being able to stick with something when times get tough. I mean, it's like marriage in this country anymore. It gets a little bit tough. Oh God, that's it. I'm bailing, and you walk rather than stick to it. Well, the gal that I'm with today is the same one that was with me it'll be 50 years in February that I've been married to the same gal. So she's put up with this nonsense for 50 years now. And so it is just trying to do, and always keep in mind to do the right thing. To do it is so important. It's like people. What we do now is once you get to the point of having an employee, if you can treat that employee with respect and treat them, they've got their own mind. God, let them use their own mind. And we just had a rash of folks retire this year. A gal just retired from us in August. January would have been her 40th anniversary here. We've got another guy that is just now retiring. He retired originally 13 years ago. He just didn't quit. So he stayed on another 13 years. Anyway, he's just in the process of really retiring now. But they've been invaluable to the business. I've learned so much from these people over the years. Dan alluded to this early on that he learned from his employees on different things and different parts that he just didn't know that somebody else brought into it. Well, that's what we've been able to do here. And it is respect, it is integrity, it is being honest with yourself and honest with your customers. And being able to stick with it through the tough times. If it gets really bad and you've got to go do something else for a period, don't give up on your dream. We've had a ton of people here over the years. I'll try to make this as quick as I can, but we've had a ton of people over the years that have come here, worked here for 10 years, 15 years, and then left and started their own business. So we just lost a guy the other day doing that same exact thing, that he is going to go to work for himself. I applaud him. I mean, we love to see that. Not when they go into a competitive business, obviously, but to start what we've got today, a guy couldn't do it. You could start a small business, but the scale we're on now, no, it'd be almost impossible for somebody to come in on the scale we are now. But for a guy to go out and start his own business, one of our really, really good customers was a young guy that, not young anymore, but he worked for me for like 15 years, 18 years, then went out on his own and builds hot rods and race cars on the side, and or in his own business, and we still supply him with parts. So I absolutely love small business. It's what drives this country. It's what makes this country what it is small business. It's no matter what other people think, it is, and I know these, Dan, I know you do, Steve, I know you do, Sabra, I know you do, that small business is a driver. It's what makes this country as great as it is.
I like that. Hey, guys, y'all are some pros because we hit our time limit. But hey, we got a couple of quick questions if y'all don't mind. We're going to do a rapid fire, okay? Hey, do you charge time and materials? Somebody wants to know. What's the best way to charge? Time and materials or bids? Somebody wants to know. How do you do it? Who wants to go? Rapid fire. Dan, you're shaking your head. Give me that.
All right, you either have to be the biggest genius in the world or the biggest moron to price a project like we do before you start. And I'm certainly not the smartest guy in the world, and I'm not dumb enough to do it. So it's time and materials. There's no other way to do this business.
Yeah. Steve, talk to me. What you got?
Time and material. That's the way we do it too. A lot of times we try to figure out everything we're going to do, but there's no way. So I've never bid on the car.
All right, I'm gonna ask you this from a different reason. I know you're a manufacturer, so you got prices for your deal and all that. But you deal with so many builders across the country. The ones who are still in business and successful, are they time and materials or are they bids? Just generally speaking, what do you think most successful companies out there are doing?
Generally, time and materials. I think that is truly the most popular. Guys can give an idea of what previous projects cost, and I mean, that's all Steve could do. That's all Dan could do, would be say, if you're looking at this project, I know Bobby Alloway, for example, he will look at a car and say, well, this is what such and such costs, but he will not give them an actual cost. It is they're time and material cars. Yeah,
I do the same thing. Here's my shop rate. Do you need to look at a car for what? It's gonna cost the same price. It doesn't matter what condition it's in. It's time and materials. So I like that. Talk to me, Dan.
If I can throw in one thing, I don't give, and everybody wants the estimate. That's one thing I refuse to do. What I do is I talk to a customer, I explain to them what we've got to do, and then I say to them, what's your budget? And if they give me a number that works, we'll start the project. And if they don't, I say, we can't help you. So I actually reverse it and flip it onto the customers, and it worked quite well.
Yeah, Steve, what do you think about that?
Yes,
I want you, Steve, to build me. I heard you pretty good. I want you to build me a 67 Camaro. I got $60,000. I want all the bells and the whistles, baby. Can you do it for me?
I say, I can't. If, we look at all the stuff, and like I said, if it adds up more than that, we just can't do it,
I got a question from Butch. Do any of you see a growing need for freelance help in the industry? I guess he means a hired gun. You don't have any staff and they need somebody, a big gun to come in and help you knock out a project. I guess is what he means by freelance help in the industry. Who wants to tackle that?
Hell yes.
Who said that?
Hell yes. There's so few trained people in this industry. There was a Forbes magazine ad where 65% of Americans can't even check tire pressure on their own car. So if there's talented guys out there, gals, they have a job as far as I'm concerned about any time.
And say call him, he gonna hire you. Steve, I think you have a more traditional hot rod structure. I think is you got some family working with you in the business and a couple other people. Is that right?
Well, I got my son. He does the secretary work. And
would you be in need of freelance help? Someone that comes in, kind of help you knock out a few projects and then they're gone? Or do you want more of the traditional employee, kind of like Art has?
No, I think where we're at, that you take it any way you can get it. That's what somebody does. And I know Charlie Hutton and different guys have done that over the past, and they bring people in, and I'm open. That sounds fine to me.
But you got two of the biggest names in the business. They give them a call. If you any good, they gonna hire you. I got another question from. What'd you say? I got a question from.
I was gonna.
What you got?
going to throw in real quick. We actually do the same thing, only in it's a different scale though. We'll bring somebody in if we have a special part that we need on the machine. We'll have somebody come in and program the machine, one of the CNCs, and do that on the side, that sort of thing. But it's the same thing. And then if we get an opportunity to get somebody really good in here, we'll do everything we can do to keep them here.
Question from Trevor. What do you find is the most difficult part in working with customers on a bill? Likewise, what brings you the greatest joy working with clients? Dan is smiling. Dan, you go first.
The most difficult part is always the money. Look, as I explained to everyone here, I am the rope in a tug of war. The clients want it as cheap and fast as they can possibly get it, in a way, and the employees want as long and as meticulous in detail as they can, and I'm the guy that sort of fights that battle in between. So that's the tough part, is the number.
That was a heck of an answer. Come on, Steve, try it. What's the worst part? What's the best part in dealing with clients building some of these cool cars that you're being built?
I think Dan did a good job of summing that up, pretty, if you ask me. And, I don't know. It's just the fun. The part I enjoy the most is the finished part. Obviously that when they get the car and get to do what they want to, and you see them out there, going up and down the road and hear the stories. And like I said,
how do you feel? I'm just going rapid fire. How do you feel? Steve is one of your clients. I'm one of your clients. I don't know if Dan has ordered anything from you, but how do you, Dan's shaking his head, yes, so we 3 clients. What's the worst part and best part dealing with us? You know what I mean? Same question.
And for me, and this is the God's truth, is that for me, it's almost our clients, our customers, our end users, God, there's so many of them that become good friends. I mean, like Steve, that we look at it and we say, we're so blessed to be in the business we're in, because we're like a house. We're like a house that just has the foundation poured. We're it. I mean, we're the first ones in on this job. So everybody's happy with what we do, and we're happy with being able to give them a product. The ones I would hate to be is the poor guy doing the upholstery, the poor guy doing the paint, the poor guy doing that last bit when a car is over budget and everything else. But we're on the front end, so we rarely do we have issues that way.
Hey, I got a question coming in from Blake, 2 more. Over the years in the industry, have you seen a big change in customer expectation on a quality restoration or resto mod? Come on, Dan, what you got?
The standards keep going up. What was acceptable, and it's interesting, if you go to Europe today is like America was 25 years ago. A decent sort of home build is what most clients expect over in England today. And I think in the 1990s in America, you were, if you did a nice paint job and a decent interior and a decent motor, everyone was happy. Today, people, if it can't go to the Detroit Auto Show and win the Riddler, they're not going to be happy, and that's kind of the new standard for a lot of clients.
Wow. All right. Steve, what do you got? What's the expectation? Has it lowered? Has the bar risen? What's going on?
Oh, it does. It has raised every time. And I think you do that to yourself. But there's a lot of talented people out there, and that's you're only competing against yourself most of the time. But I think the customer looks around and the world's got a lot smaller. People get on the internet and look at everything and see things, and
our time is definitely up. I got one last one for you. I'll start with Art. I'll end with Dan. Art, what's your favorite personal car?
Well, I got rid of my Corvette that I had. It was a 60 Corvette.
Oh, you got rid of the Corvette?
Yeah, I did, and that went away 2 years ago. But I've still got a 55 Chev 2-door post, and it was the first one that got one of our true bolt-on frames. So I've got to say that's my favorite car. So,
Steve, favorite personal car? You build them for everybody else. I heard Bobby say, I build him one and I build me one. I build him one. I wish I could do that. Come on, Steve, what you got personal? What you like?
Me, I like a lot of cars, and that's it just depends where I'm at, what mood I'm in, the one I'm driving at the time, that's what, just getting down the road and having fun. I can take any old car and have a great time. So I like them all.
All right, Dan, they want to know what you got, man. You build them for everybody else. You build them for celebrities and entertainers and politicians. Well, what you got that you like and you enjoy?
Well, my answer is twofold. The current favorite car, which I desired for 30 years and could never afford, I own a 63 split window coupe that is gold with the tan interior, and it's breathtaking. But I'm building the one car now to trump it. I found a 63 Fuelie that we are adding factory air conditioning to factory fuel injection with power steering, power windows, power brakes, but all original. So we'll have, and we're adding the original Zora Arcus Duntov trunk to the car. So it will be a 100% original concept Corvette that they wanted to build and never got funded to. And of course, it'll be Sebring silver with the red interior.
Isn't it perfect, y'all pros? Here we are at the ARMO Automotive Restoration Market Organization that's talking about preservation, and Dan says he's building an original. Hey, you guys are some originals. You guys are absolutely amazing. You guys are rock stars in my book. I have absolutely enjoyed it. Had a great time. On behalf of the entire ARMO panel, hey, it was good. It was awesome. Man, I wish we had more time. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Steps will get you to the finish line. City Classic Cars builds the best, the baddest, the nastiest SEMA builds on the planet.